Hello, everyone, and welcome to Bren NXT on the Upper Tier YouTube channel, where we talk everything NXT. NXT, I thought was brilliant last night, so let's get into it. We opened up with the new NXT champion, Joe Hendry. I said it last week, and I'll say it again. I'm over the moon for this guy. He mentioned in his promo that he's gone from two-time national champion in amateur wrestling in the UK. He didn't mention what culture, but I remember from what culture, but he mentioned TNA and then all the way to NXT champion and everything in between. Look, I think Joe Hendry deserves this. It's fantastic. I cannot wait to see what he brings in the future. But anyway, I also thought Booker T attempting to sing Joe Hendry's song was funny. But look, class promo from Joe Hendry, a little bit about momentary doubt and belief in himself, saying that eventually he would bring, or essentially he would bring NXT to a new level. He was then interrupted by the Vanity Project. So Jackson Drake, Brad Baylor, and Ricky Smokes came through with the interruption. Jackson Drake is the Evolve champion, but the NXT crowd were not having this at all. They were not fans of Jackson Drake at all. He got booed out of the building. But Jackson Drake's point was he basically said that Joe Hendry is mid at best, and he kind of indicated that he didn't belong in NXT. Which is an absolute farce, as we know, but a great way to get heat. They eventually jumped Joe, where Joe looked really good at the start. Like initially, he looked really, really good. Fall away slams a lot, but the numbers game, as always, wins over here. I do love that it set up an NXT title match with Joe Hendry facing Jackson Drake later on, which is all good with me. This shows that Joe Hendry is a fighting champion, and that's the message he wants to throw across. We go then to Sol Ruka and Zarya. They were talking in the women's locker room about their match. Sol really wants to figure this out. Zarya is having none of it. Similar to last week, she talked about the plenty of opportunities that Sol has and is getting, which this intensifies later on. You can really see the anger in Zarya as it's going on. And I do love what happened later on, which we'll touch on in around the main event. But the tension building weekly on this is how you build a good story, and the possibilities they have is endless. Again, we'll talk about it later. They cut to Jada Parker walking backstage. She said, tonight's ass whooping is all about Blake Monroe. She said something like that. I would not do it justice. It was very cool anyway. And then she walked out. But then we cut to Keanu Carver. He wanted a word with the interim GM, Robert Stone, in the backstage area. And Carver's basically complaining about the fact that Jackson Drake just walks in and gets a title shot against Joe Hendry. Stone then, he basically confronted Hendry. He said Drake at least confronted Hendry. And Shawn Michaels wants chaos. He made that very clear, and Stone said he will give him chaos as long as he's interim GM. Carver walked away saying that he'll give him chaos, all right. And we'll touch on that later on because something happens in the show later on that shows such chaos. After Carver left, Stone wanted to say more, but then he was intimidated and Stone basically backed away. Jada Parker versus Blake Monroe. The match result to this was a double countout. That's two double countouts in a few days of each other. Not a fan of that. One being on Raw with Natty and Maxine. I didn't like that, the way it happened on the other show. Well, look, the Natty thing is a different story, but I don't like the way it's two double countouts in 2 days. It was good before the countout, though, to be fair. Parker and Blake kept on fighting each other after the match, which was very cool. Again, too similar to Raw. The security guys, they were getting low blowed. They were getting a bit of a hiding. And again, pretty chaotic, which is what Shawn Michaels wants. I think maybe this leads to a no holds barred match, or maybe it's a last women standing match or something like that. We'll see. But the madness after this match was brilliant. It was really, really good. And look, like that, it made me very, very, very excited to see what happens next. And hopefully it's something like that that can highlight what they can do. NXT spotlight video about Tatum Paxley. I love the cinematic feel of this. I'm a big fan of film. So her swimming in the water and then the eye shot at the end. Basically, she said she needed something to complete her and get clarity. So look, does she take the NXT Women's North title from Izzy Dame? I think let's see what happens. But I really liked this video. I thought the dramatics were deadly, very cool. So I hope they keep that up and I hope something comes of it. We then cut to Kale Dixon, who was backstage with Uriah Connors. Dixon was basically saying that Connors left them last week when they helped Mr. Chase bring Chase U back. Then Lexus King, Ariana Grace, and Stack showed up to talk to Uriah. I love this, by the way. I'm a big fan of this. I'm here for it. King and Connors talked about embracing their family history, which I love. King says there's one more piece to the puzzle. It's just getting better by the week. And Connor says he'll talk to them since their fathers have such a history. So what I'm thinking now, is there a second generation stable coming up? I think it's going to lead to that. It's obviously going to lead to that. And like I said last week, and I'll say it again, I adore how this is progressing. So I can't wait to see how that unfolds. Next up, we had the WWE Speed Tournament match. This was Josh Briggs versus Eli Knight. I meant what I said last week. I'm not a big fan of the Speed Tournament. This was won by Eli Knight. But like all tournament speed matches, there's a 3-minute time limit. I'm not mad on this. In saying that, there does be some good stuff in it, but it's too quick. Similar to last week, it was really fast, some cool stuff with a super stiff-looking moonsault with Eli Knight's knees hitting Briggs straight to the rib cage. That looked rough. It looked dog rough. But look, again, not a fan of these matches. But after the match, Eli Knight and Le Flair, shook hands ahead of their match next week. Then the WWE Speed Champion Jasper Troy attacked both guys. Troy put down Flair and then he gave Knight a chokeslam onto Le Flair. I keep calling him Flair. It's just a force of habit from talking about, I like to say Charlotte or Rick. Anyway, very cool, little development in it. But in the grand scheme of things, as I said, I'm not really a fan of the speed thing. I think it started off as a next thing and now it's made its way onto NXT. I really hope it kind of fizzles out and they can focus on other things. Anyway, on to better things. We went to Lola Voice, who is, as we know, one half of the AAA Mixed Tag Team Champions. She was backstage speaking to Robert Stone. Everybody wants to speak to Robert Stone tonight. She was hoisting her right hand, as we know. Stone said that Voice has a match with Kalani Jordan next week. And Voice said she wanted to have that match. Jordan then attacked Voice from behind and kicked Voice's hand into a shelf backstage. This obviously sets up the match next week. They've got something to work with. There's going to be selling of the hand, and this match should be really, really good. I'm looking forward to it. Keanu Carver was then shown in a different area backstage. And this is what I alluded to earlier on. Carver was holding a weapon in his hand, and there was a few lads that were just down and out on the floor. And I guess this is this is the chaos he's bringing forward. Robert Stone wants chaos. Shawn Michaels wants chaos. Is this the chaos they're looking for? Anyway, Carver looked cool, and I just kind of laughed at this. I thought it was really cool. We go back to the ring now, and we hear from Dark State. There was a lot in this. There was a hell of a lot in this, but it was loaded with good stuff. Sean Spears and Nico Vance showed up. OTM's Lucian Price and Bronco Nima showed up. Hank and Tank showed up. There was some talk. There was some mind games. And it was good to see some of this because, like all tag team division across WWE, the NXT tag team division hasn't been that strong in a while. But with this, they had 4 really, really good teams in this segment. And I'm really hoping it's a good thing it's a good sign of things to come. Because we touched on it on Pro Wrestling Weekly the other day. They really need to look at that tag team wrestling needs to come back. Anyway, this ended with one of my guys, Tony D'Angelo. He gotten some revenge on Dark State. There were spares, there were spine busters, and this is the kind of stuff I love, and I love this. It was brilliant. Cool little segment, great little ending. Robert Stone was then interviewed by Kelly Kincaid backstage. Stone said that next week it's OTM versus Hank and Tank versus the Culling, and whoever wins gets an NXT tag team title match in Atlanta. I can't wait for that one. Obviously, off the back of a cool segment like that. Now, on to a weird one. And again, I thought this was funny. Stone walked into his office and Shiloh Hill was there. Hill wanted to talk about something, but before they could get into anything, the NXT North American champion, Ethan Page, walked in. Big, big fan of this guy. I love his work. Shiloh Hill walked out. Page then spoke to Stone about potential opponents because he wanted one more win to set the record for successful title defenses of the NXT North American title. And then Hill walked back in, grabbed his machete. I can't believe I'm saying this. Grabbed his machete. Stone suggested Hill, and Page was said, "Yeah, that's cool with me." I'm paraphrasing, of course. And obviously, Page was afraid of Hill with the machete in his hands. Um, Maybe the machete was too far. I wouldn't be Johnny Tight ass around like that, but maybe it was too far. In saying that, I thought this was really funny and really well done. So let's see what happens there. We go on then to the NXT Championship. Joe Hendry versus Jackson Drake, who had Brad Baylor and Ricky Smokes with him. Now, the winner was never in doubt here. It was always going to be Joe Hendry. Both men were very, very good here, and it was a good start to Hendry's run. My only gripe here is that the world champ should always main event when the belt's on the line. And that's just my opinion. Other people might see it differently. Would love to know what everyone thinks. In saying that, we'll talk about the main event in a few minutes because we alluded to it earlier on. Anyways, after the match, Ricky Saints attacked Hendry in the ring, hit him with some punches, and then he did a bit of a tornado DDT, and then he posed with the belt. We had an interesting take on Ricky this week on Pro Wrestling Weekly. Darren from the comments and also from the football show at Niall on Thursdays predicted that the masked man could possibly be Ricky Saints. What a cool twist that would be. Great shout from Darren as well. We then had Hank Walker and Tank Ledger versus the Vanity Project, being Brad Baylor and Ricky Smokes. Winners by pinfall was obviously was Vanity Project, Brad Baylor and Ricky Smokes. Bit of a cheap win, but it's exactly what you'd expect. Jackson Drake obviously got involved here. So, bit of a cheap win, but look, it was what it was. Now, it's time to do the main event. Zaria and Sol Ruka versus Ren QCC, Kendall Gray and Ren Sinclair. Now, the winners was Sol Ruka and Zaria. And it's not who won, it was how it was won. Overall, I really liked this. Sol Ruka getting the win, making Zaria even more angry. Zaria did not look happy at all as Sol Ruka celebrated getting the win, as she is now the new #1 contender for the NXT women's title. That should be very, very interesting. Let's see what happens here, because the NXT champion, JC Jane, I'm talking too fast, excuse me, walked out with Fatal Influence, and they had a bit of a stare down with Sol Ruka. Their NXT women's title match is going to be on in 2 weeks, February 24th. So Jane and Ruka kind of went back and forward a bit, and that was the end of the show. Now, I want to talk about this because there's a lot of possibilities here. At the end of this, Sol Ruka could be JC Jane for the NXT women's title. That could happen, and that would be cool. I'd be cool with that. Or they could have Zaria do a massive body turn on Sol and cost her the title. In saying that, going back to my first theory, if Ruka wins, the first feud is waiting. The first feud is there. The feud between Ruka and Zaria. And them two can really, really work together. And look, as I mentioned above, all directions with me would be fine. All in all, solid episode of NXT. I expect nothing less. And then next week on NXT is looking like it's going to be full of matches. We have the Speed Tournament final, which is Elo LaFleur versus Eloy Knight, not LA Knight. The winner gets a Speed title match. Tony D'Angelo, the Don, versus Cutler James. We have Hank and Tank versus Vanity Project versus OTM versus the Culling. And the winners get an NXT Tag Team Championship match. We also have a North American Championship as established earlier on. Ethan Page versus that mad thing, Shiloh Hill. And then, of course, Kalani Jordan versus Lola Voice. Should be good. Looking forward to talking about it. So until next time, hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel for everything wrestling and football. Constantly stuff getting dropped on the channel. And Pro Wrestling Weekly, the 2 football shows, Mondays and Thursdays, to the SmackDown show. So thanks for watching. Hope to see you on the next video, and all the best. Thank you very much.